At some point in your life, in your trading, you are already the person. You're already the trader that you want to become. At some point, you're doing the right things the right way. Not often enough, but there is some seed of success. There is some seed of greatness in what you do and how you do it.
Hello, and welcome to the Trader's Journey for Investors Underground. In this episode, it's an honor to be joined by Dr. Brett Steenbarger, widely considered to be the leading expert in the field of trading psychology. Dr. Steenbarger is a clinical psychologist, performance coach at some of the top hedge funds and proprietary trading firms around the world, and author of several landmark books in the field, including The Psychology of Trading and The Daily Trading Coach, among others. Dr. Steenbarger has studied what sets successful traders apart, what causes others to struggle and burn out, and he brings a perspective that blends research, deep understanding of human behavior, and practical coaching. It's my honor to introduce Dr. Brett Steenbarger. Hello, Dr. Steenbarger. Thanks for being here and welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much, Anthony. I really appreciate the invite.
Absolutely, Dr. Steenbarger. You're one of those voices and well-known authors within the trading community that I'm sure a lot of the audience knows of. And for those who don't, you're definitely considered the leading expert in this field of trading psychology. So it's really a pleasure to have you on the show, and I think it's a treat for the audience and myself.
Well, thank you so much. There are a number of good people who write and deliver services in the area of trading psychology. And I find it interesting to follow their work. I end up learning things because everyone approaches it from a different angle. And that's what makes the field so interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm all ears, and I'm sure the audience will be all ears into, any particular authors or individuals that you are especially inspired by. So feel free to let anybody know of those names as the episode unfolds.
I might drop a couple names. Yeah.
Yeah. The first question that I had for you, Dr. Steenbarger, was, about your background. How were you able to combine the world of psychology and trading? Because at the outset, people might not necessarily assume those two are connected as much as they are, and traders would know just how connected those two can be.
It was a total coincidence. I would love to say it was part of a grand master plan, but no way. I was interested in financial markets from an early age. In fact, I did a project in 7th grade on the stock market and being a stockbroker. So I had an interest, throughout college, throughout my early graduate school. And actually during graduate school, and this was the late 1970s, I started doing my own trading in the equity markets and, learned quite a few things, read quite a few things. But at the same time, I was training to be a psychologist. That was my main identity. So those were parallel interests. A little story. This was before everyone was trading computerized, and everyone was online. And so I would get brokers calling me during my graduate school classes, and they would interrupt the sessions. And I finally was told that I should decide what my priorities were. And so I had to scale back my trading. Anyway, I ended up getting a degree in clinical psychology and ended up working first in community mental health, and then got a position at Cornell University, did student counseling and some other work there. But it was while I was working in my early days as a psychologist, I picked up the trading on the side. When I finally joined the medical school in Syracuse, New York, which I am still a part of, my morning hours were relatively free. So I would trade during early morning hours, and then I would do all my work and my research and meeting with people after that. And so to this day, I'm most comfortable trading, the morning hours. But those again were parallel interests until finally, at the encouragement of a well-known trader and author, Victor Niederhofer, at his encouragement, I wrote a book. It was called The Psychology of Trading. And to my surprise, the book became popular. To my even greater surprise, a firm in Chicago loved the book and offered me a full-time position. So I went to part-time on the clinical faculty in Syracuse, where I remain, and started work full-time with market makers in electronic futures. So it was a whole new market, a whole new world, and that's what finally got me putting those things together.
That's really, really interesting, because for those listening who might be in school who have these parallel interests, whether it's the markets and some other, academic study, the ability to combine these parallel interests is, I think, a really interesting one for everybody, because at that
Yeah.
age when you're going through, maybe graduate school, who knows what the job market looks like, but being able to kind of blaze your own path and combine these things together, I think, is a really, really interesting one that you were able to do.
Yeah, I played basketball in school also, when I went to college. Um, and, it was just a love, and the same thing with the trading, just a love. But I never thought I was going to do basketball as a career, and I never thought I would do trading as a career. Psychology was my real love, my real interest. And going to graduate school and then working at the medical school, I gained an appreciation for research in psychology and what's called evidence-based approaches to change. And so I started applying all this research-backed knowledge to the specific situations of traders. And that ended up working out quite well.
That's one of the sort of questions that I had for you and wanted to touch on, which is sort of, the observations that you've noticed among successful traders or even elite traders who go on to have, successful or careers that are full of longevity versus those who might burn out. I've heard, because you mentioned basketball, that, maybe someone who's, has a background in sports is coachable, is able to make change. Are some of those some of the observations that you've seen in successful elite traders over your career so far?
Yeah, and the background in basketball and in sports more generally, we had a number of people, when I was working at my first hedge fund, we had a number of people who had a background as competitive chess players. Competitive activity in general is common among successful professional traders. But we did a study at this hedge fund, a big study on what makes portfolio managers successful. We studied many, many different ones. And we studied their absolute returns. We studied their risk-adjusted returns, Sharpe ratio. And the number one predictor of success was intellectual curiosity. The really great traders, the really successful traders, love the search for opportunity. And they dig and they dig and they dig, and they accumulate information. They talk to lots of people. They do their own research. They look at lots of charts. They they gather so much information, and they love finding ideas. And so even when the P&L might not be going so well, they're energized by looking for the next round of really good trades.
That's really interesting, because there's a lot of people I see online who are just looking to copy one particular strategy. They might sort of hold one trader in such high esteem, and in many cases rightfully so, but the market tends to change, and one strategy doesn't always necessarily, transfer over to the next market cycle. So it's really interesting that you mentioned this intellectual curiosity. Is that sort of tied in as well with like originality and being able to
Yes,
think
creativity. Yes, creativity, originality. And, the research on developing expertise in any field says that mentoring is a necessary step for success. I think it's one of the huge, huge challenges for individual traders out there. They're not part of a group. They don't have a mentor in a formal way. And so the beginning part of mentoring, you are copying the pro and learning what they do. But if you have many mentors, you copy what they do, and then you end up synthesizing it your way, and that's how you develop your own style. So copying is a step in development, but it certainly is not the final one.
Is there particular traits that you notice, among those who struggle and don't do well? Is it sort of always just sort of the contra or the inversion of what, traits successful traders tend to have, or is there a little bit more to it, for people that struggle or eventually burn out or quit trading altogether?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people burn out and quit simply because they don't have proper training and mentoring. Just watching screens, watching videos, that informs us, but that's not training. I teach at a medical school. I know what training looks like. We train physicians in different specialties. And it's an intensive process where you are observing the expert, observing the pro, then trying out what they do, getting feedback from them. It's a very hands-on process. And so lacking that, many traders just don't develop expertise. It shows in their performance. They become frustrated and they leave. I think that's a huge part of the problems with success, especially for individual traders on their own. There's a second quality that came out in the research that we did, and that's entrepreneurship. The really great traders are entrepreneurs. They approach trading entrepreneurially. It's their business. And just like any great entrepreneur, they are really dedicated to building a successful business. Well, if I start my own business, I'm not just going to copy what the business next door does or down the street. I have to offer something unique to consumers. It's the same way developing trading. You have to do something different, do something unique, do something that's you, that really taps into what you're good at. And so in my hedge fund work, I'm involved in hiring, and I interview people. And so I ask them for their trading ideas recently and how they've approached those. And I'm listening for uniqueness. Uniqueness in the idea, uniqueness in how the idea is expressed, uniqueness in how the position is managed. If something doesn't hit me between the eyes as being different, unique, the odds of that being a successful professional really go down.
Have you seen that successful traders begin their journey successfully, or does it sometimes take them a while to ramp up? Whether that's months or even years. Could someone start a little bit slow, even though they have a lot of these characteristics and traits of success, but the P&L's not necessarily showing it? In your experience, have you seen that play out successfully for them over time?
Yeah. So they do have a quick learning curve, but realize that in the professional trading world, when you're hired, when you start out, let's say you're a young person, you're hired, you start out as an analyst. You don't, at a hedge fund, you don't start out managing money. You don't know the first thing about it. So their learning curve as an analyst tends to be quick. They learn about research. They learn how to generate good ideas. They learn how to put different ideas together in a portfolio and how to express those. And when they show good progress there, then they're given what's called a sleeve of capital that they can manage themselves. And then they get feedback, they get mentoring about that. And typically, the promising ones do have a good learning curve. They make progress, but it's not weeks and months. This is something, any kind of expertise is developed over years. And so that's true even for the best professional traders.
At what stage of their development does the coaching begin? And I guess the second part of that is, when should it begin? Should it begin at inception, when they start trading? What are your views on that from the performance side and the psychologist side?
Yeah, it's a good question, Anthony. And there are a couple of different answers depending on the type of trader that we're talking about. Recognize that among the traders I work with at multi-strat hedge funds, the number of them who come to me with emotional issues, they're going on tilt and they've lost their discipline, is zero. No one. Because they would never get to that point if they had those issues. So they are using coaching for a very different purpose. I have a book coming out early in 2026 called Positive Trading Psychology, and it's the application of positive psychology to the trading world, and something I've written about on the Trader Feed blog. And one of the things I describe is the approach that I take called solution-focused work. So in solution-focused work, you're studying what people do well. You're studying what they're doing when they don't have problems. And then you figure out, well, what are their solutions? How are they not having those problems? What are they doing right? And how could we do more of that? That's very applicable to professional traders, studying them at their best and helping them build on their strengths. But I think it's equally applicable to developing individual traders that, they make mistakes, they run into problems, but they do some things right. Let's look at what you've done right, and let's see how you did it right, and let's see if we can build upon that. That, I think, really any trader can benefit from, even relatively early in their development.
That's a great point and a great distinction on several levels. One that really strikes me is, there's so many retail traders with small accounts that sort of need trading, or they feel like they need trading to be their main thing, their main source of income. And as a result, it's so much easier for them to go on tilt because they're not also, say, for example, an analyst who's also focusing on other parts of the market. So I think that's important for retail traders to hear and to understand, especially if they're comparing themselves in this world of trading with what they see online, because it could be very different.
Yeah, you raise a really good point. When you start with a small amount of money, in order to make a living from that, you have to take too much risk. And the odds of blowing up, even if you're a good trader, the odds of blowing up are high, that eventually you'll have a string of losing trades that'll put you too deep into the hole. So it is important to have a good capital base to develop your trading. I think that's why proprietary trading firms are useful, because you're trading the capital of the firm. I've done some work with SMB, as you know, and there you trade the firm's money, you share profits with the firm, but you're not at risk of you going broke, because you're putting all your eggs in the basket and on the line. So I think that really does help the psychology of developing expertise.
Yeah. Absolutely. And with the rise of technology and the availability these days to be able to trade, just through your phone, which is so much different from even when I was in college and when you were in school, having to call a broker to place a trade versus just take out your phone and casually place a trade on one of these apps, in between lectures or during a lecture, even, have you sort of seen traits and different types of issues arise, uh, from traders just because the availability of trading is so much more prevalent today than maybe 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think there's a danger to it, as you well know, Anthony, and that is it's so easy to place a trade that you can just get an idea in your head, whip out the phone, and maybe check with ChatGPT and put on the trade. Realize that in professional trading firms, and this is true of proprietary firms, and this is true of hedge funds, it's true of investment banks, all trading is conducted as part of teams. So you don't have individual people just whipping out their phone and putting on trade. That doesn't happen. You're working with a team. You're discussing ideas within a team. You're researching within a team. You're learning from each other, with each other, helping each other. And I think that helps instill a kind of discipline. Again, to use a sports analogy, maybe if I were just on my own, I'm playing basketball, and I would take the wild 3-point shot. But I have an obligation to my team. I have an obligation to my coach. And so I'm going to make that extra pass and get the assist rather than the 3-point shot. I think there's a lot to be said for teams instilling discipline. And we see some of that dynamic in trading communities.
When you have to explain the shot selection at team practice the next day, it's a lot harder to do when you actually have a team who you're accountable for versus just I felt like taking this trade and risking maybe 20% of the account or more.
Yeah. Now I have to correct you though. From my basketball days, you don't explain the bad shot selection the next day. You are pulled out of the game at that moment. The coach stares you in the eyes. I had this happen. Stares you in the eyes of the sidelines and lets you know.
Oh, absolutely. I as well have been known for some pretty bad shot selection.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, but I do tell the story. The coach at the time when I was there, and this was before Duke was really Duke, and really very successful in college basketball. But the coach back then, he would take you out of the game, and he would get really stern. But he'd look you in the eyes, and he would say, "Come on, you're better than that," which I thought was really positive coaching. He's kicking you in the butt, but he's affirming that you're too good to be doing this kind of stuff, and I think that's a helpful way of approaching coaching traders and other performance professionals.
That's a really good point too, because especially for so many retail traders out there, they might only arrive at that conclusion or begin to think about that this positive affirmation that they are better than that, weeks, months, maybe even years later, rather than having it happen in the moment. And, correct. I would love to get your take on this, from a psychology standpoint, what can that do to someone's psychology? Being able to hear in the moment how they could do better, that they could do better versus just kicking themselves for weeks at a time.
Yeah, and that's the right distinction, because when the coach takes you out and says that to you, what does that do? You're inspired. You want to please the coach. You want to live up to the coach's expectation. You want to live up to the team's expectation. So you go away kicked in the butt, but you go away inspired. You're not beating yourself up about it. You go back in the game and you say, I'm not going to make that mistake again, and I'm going to make sure that, yeah. So I think it creates a really positive psychology, that kind of coaching. Now, for the individual trader who may not have a coach to pull them out and that type of thing, the keeping of a journal and tracking in a journal, here's what I did well today. Here's what I need to improve. And every single day, you're identifying, what did you do well? What did you do well? As well as, what do I need to improve? That instills some of that positive psychology. Because then in your own experience, you can see, well, wait a minute, I didn't make that mistake yesterday. I'm better than that, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so to some degree, developing traders can coach themselves using their journal going forward and tracking their strengths as well as their vulnerabilities.
That was one of the key takeaways for me reading The Daily Trading Coach, which is you are the coach. You're the person pressing the buttons, but you're also the coach. And you have to be able to do this on your own. And you have to be able to ask the questions that are right, assess what you did right and wrong, and be able to be there the next day to press the buttons. So I think
that is absolutely true. That when you're trading on your own, you are the coach and the trader. And just like in basketball, what do you do to prepare for a game? There's lots of running of drills. There's lots of studying the opponent and what are the opportunities that are likely to arise. There's all sort of preparation that goes into it. And that gets you in the right mindset. You know what you're supposed to do. You can prepare yourself. You can be your own coach. Put yourself through your own drills. Put yourself through your own preparation as part of you developing you.
If you're looking for ways to take your trading to the next level, Investors Underground might be able to help. You'll have access to courses and mentors to learn from, some of the best technology available for scanning stocks and breaking news, and access to the chat rooms, where you'll find a vibrant community of focused traders who share their trade ideas in real time each day. Members have access to the morning broadcasts, where the IU moderators share their trade ideas for the day ahead during the pre-market session. Members also have access to the study sessions, where they could share their trades and receive critical feedback from the moderators and trusted members of the community. Members also have access to webinars, moderator watch lists, and all the other tools and resources that Investors Underground has to offer. Listeners of The Trader's Journey can access exclusive membership deals available at investorsunderground.com/journey. And now, back to our episode with Dr. Brett Steenbarger. Dr. Steenbarger, can you talk a little bit about some of the recent work that you've been doing or observations that you've seen, more recently? We're recording this in early September of 2025, and I'm just kind of curious, what's at the forefront of the work you're doing or what you're seeing in the world of trading psychology currently?
Yeah, so I'm doing a few new things. And I'll just rattle off a few, including a couple that you and I have talked about, Anthony. One of the things that I'm doing currently will strike people as quirky. Like right now, I'm sitting talking with you, and I'm sitting at a table, and arrayed around me are 3 sleeping cats. My talking puts them to sleep. What can I tell you? But raising rescue cats. These are cats that have been abandoned, neglected, abused, giving them a home, helping them develop. That's something that's become a real passion. And I actually have built a website about that, peytoncat.com. And that grounds me because it teaches me every single morning, every single day, it's not about me. And it's not about P&L, P&L, P&L. That's important, but it's one important thing among many things. I have kids, I have a wife, I have grandkids, I have these cats. And so trading fits into life. And when you have that perspective, it's hard to go too high, too low. So that's one part. I'm always working on that part of my life that gives balance. The other thing I've been working on are very interesting technologies that we can use to literally train our brains. Biofeedback, or what's called neurofeedback, which is brainwave biofeedback, has been around for ages, but the devices that measure those are big machines, and it's like going in for an MRI or something. Recently, there have become wearable devices that measure our brain waves and give us real-time feedback. So literally, we can train ourselves to stay focused, stay calm, and build our focusing muscles, so to speak. It's a really interesting application for trading, I believe, because many times traders become distracted, fatigued, and end up making mistakes simply because they're not as sharp as they could be. So it's a way of training the brain for the states we need to be in to do our best trading.
I know that the audience is going to be curious to know more about that particular device. Is there anything that you could share with us there about that, or how people might be able to look into this for themselves?
Yeah, there are many devices actually, and on the Trader Feed blog, TraderFeed, I have some blog posts about this, but there are actually many different devices by different makers. There are 3 devices that I personally have been working with. The first one is a device that measures brain waves and tells us whether we are in a very focused state or in a very active, distracted state. And that device is made by Muse, M-U-S-E. And they put you through exercises. As I've written about, my favorite exercise is the rainforest. And it works through an app, and you're listening, and you hear the sounds of rain in the rainforest. If you concentrate and maintain your concentration, the rain starts to decrease. If you become really focused, not only does the rain stop, but you start to hear little birds chirp. And the app keeps track of how much rain has fallen and how many birds have chirped. And so it's a way, you could be competitive, it's a way of tracking your progress in staying focused versus being distracted. So that's EEG biofeedback, or what's called neurofeedback. Now, Muse has a second kind of feedback that tracks the blood flow to the frontal cortex. The idea here is that when we are concentrating, we are activating the frontal cortex, we have more blood flow, and that affects skin forehead temperature. And so it measures that in real time. And so it tells you, when you are activating that frontal cortex versus when you might be activating other parts of the brain that are responsible for flight or fight. And so if you're wanting to not be in an emotional state, in a reactive state, and you want to be planned and you want to be on target, it's a great way of tracking your progress. And that one has an app with an owl in flight. You have to keep the owl up in the air, flying. And if you get distracted, boom, and the owl goes back down to earth. So it makes it fun, And then there's a third device by a different maker called Elamind, and it tracks your sleep quality. So it's again measuring brainwaves, but now it's measuring for deep sleep. And it's got a really unusual feature that captivated me. When it detects that you're in deep sleep, but starting to come out of deep sleep, where there are brain waves interfering with deep sleep, it sends little signals and cancels those brain waves so you can stay in deeper sleep. So I haven't done a lot of work with that, but that's going to be a big area that I focus on in the coming year, because the research tells us if we can maximize not only the quantity of our sleep, but the quality of our sleep, we're much more likely to have a good mindset for performance the next day.
That's incredible. And those are several pieces of technology that I could imagine have very applicable use in the world of trading, whether or not to even trade that day.
I
Unless,
think so. Any kind of work that people do that requires that focus, yes, I think can really benefit from that. I see it as being especially relevant to trading. And what's nice is the devices are not super expensive. It's hundreds of dollars. But once you have that, if you are disciplined, you're really training yourself. You don't need to hire a coach to do that for you with you. So that's appealing.
yeah, that's incredible. And do you think, that we'll begin to see much more of these types of apps in conjunction with, just more acceptance of the world of trading psychology and its importance? Is this something that you could see more and more traders taking seriously earlier in their trading?
Yeah, could you imagine an AI-based platform that is tracking markets and market opportunities, and at the same time is tracking your brainwaves, and will only allow you to trade if you're in the zone? Now, I'm obviously, exaggerating, but I think there'll be lots of amazing applications of this kind of technology. One assumption that people make is that working on trading psychology means working on controlling your emotions and being disciplined. And that's relevant, but that's relatively early career stuff. Maximizing cognitive functioning, maximizing our processing of information, that I think is even more promising, even more important, and a bigger part of what I would call trading psychology.
Yeah, and to that end, what does trading psychology look like for someone who's elite? They're making plenty of money, approaching market wizard level of trading success. What do they look for in terms of trading psychology, or what are the type of questions they might be asking theoretically, to improve their own trading psychology?
Yeah, I'll give you an example from the past week. Someone who's been extremely successful in a hedge fund is looking to build their team. And they need to figure out, how are we going to build the team? How will that change our processes? How can we make use of these people to help us, and how can we help them? So they're really building a business, and they're looking to develop this whole new area. Maybe they've been successful trading markets in the US and Europe, and now they want to branch out to Asia, LATAM, that kind of thing. So that's what they're using trading psychology for. They're using it as part of business building, not because they're necessarily having so many problems.
That makes a lot of sense, right? Because every trader, to a certain extent, is an entrepreneur in some sense when they're building out their business.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have traders who will reach out to me from the blog, and they want to work on how to grow their size. And so they've been successful, but how do I get to that next level and take more risk, hold bigger positions, maybe hold multiple positions? How do I do that? What's the right way of doing that? That's great those are great topics for coaching.
Is there one particular subset of maybe questions, issues, or goals that you see, or have to work on with people that kind of stands out above the rest, or is it just a kind of a whole variety of different potential topics, issues, goals to work on with different types of clients over the years?
Yeah. Again, a good question. I find that different people have different needs. And again, going back to that solution focused framework, many times they're looking to grow what they do, get bigger, get better at what they do, and they need to really understand what they do well, and they need to understand how to build upon that. And for different people, those are going to be different strategies. One common area is they've been successful in one area of trading, and they're smart enough to know that success doesn't come from just doing the same thing bigger, 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 taking more risk. At some point, to become really good, you get bigger by getting broader. So I've been trading, the market's this way. What's a way of trading that would be different from that I would be good at, that I can combine? And the two together will give me more diversified returns, more balanced returns. So when one strategy is not working, another one might be. That's a great area for work.
I had a question for traders out there who might be struggling and might not be doing well.
Yep.
In general, for those traders, broadly speaking, which I know is incredibly difficult to do, but for those who are listening who are in sort of that camp, what general sort of trading advice would you give to them? Because they might not be able to even afford a trading coach at all.
Yeah. Many times people have been successful and then they become unsuccessful. They start losing money. And it's not because they don't have discipline or because, that kind of thing. It's because markets have changed. And they're not doing a good job of identifying when and how markets are changing, and they're not doing a good job of adapting to that change. Markets are becoming more volatile. They're becoming more or less correlated. An example I've sometimes used is someone will make money trading a trending market, and then they get into a market, it's up and down, up and down, up and down, and they tell me, I can't make money, it's choppy, the market's choppy. Whenever I hear the word choppy, I know that the person doesn't know what they're doing. Because a choppy market is one of two things, at least. It's either a cycling market, so directionally it's not going anywhere, but there are ups and downs within that period that could be traded if you have ways of measuring that cyclicality. Or the choppy market is a rotational market, and funds are going into certain parts of the market and away from other parts. So you have to identify, well, what's going on when my kind of market, that directional market, isn't occurring, and how can I adapt to that? How can I take advantage of that? So you get broader, and that makes you better and better.
That's really important, a distinction as well, to be able to understand what the market is doing versus, because even then that might be offering a certain amount of opportunities for traders. I mean, sort of what might be considered choppy could be sort of a volatility that under different filters and understandings might be presenting some great opportunities for those that are taking the time understanding what's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, take the overall stock market. So that the S&P might be going up, down, up, down, up, down, not doing anything for a while. But then when you look at the individual sectors within the S&P, technology shares are really moving, and utility shares are not doing so well, or real estate shares aren't doing so well. Different money is rotating to certain things, away from certain things. And that's common with institutions that are managing lots of money. They reallocate their capital. They're not pouring more money into stocks or not taking money out of stocks. They are allocating to different parts of the market. That happens with commodities as well. And so you're tracking that reallocation, what's moving and where are the funds flowing, and focusing your trading on that.
Absolutely. Dr. Steenbarger, you've also talked quite a bit about visualization as well, for traders who are maybe looking to make changes in their trading, using the power of visualization to begin there, among other use cases for it. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of visualization for traders, either the ones that are doing well or even not doing well, but just that ability, and that the utility of visualization in trading and maybe
Yeah.
even beyond?
Yeah. Visualization is a form of mental practice. And so, in visualizing something, you are preparing yourself for it. And if you are visualizing in a vivid way, then that has the force of reality. Your mind and your body respond to it as if that's really happening. So, for instance, if you're having difficulty with positions going against you, you can visualize in real detail before the market opens. You can visualize putting on the position, it's going against you, you have a stop. How do you want to think about that? What's going through your head? How are you going to act? You can visualize that 5 times, 10 times in a row. Prepare yourself, so that when that occurs in real life, as it does to all of us, you've been there, done that. The visualization, the mental practice helps you deal with adversity without having to go through that adversity.
That can be really important for traders who are looking to maybe, add size or expand what they're trading. New instrument like options or along those lines as well. Do you think visualization is something that traders should think about early on in their trading, or is there a certain point when they should just focus on other things and get to visualization later on?
No, I think visualization is one set of techniques for working on something challenging. And you're absolutely right that growing trading size is a great way to make use of visualization. So, for example, to your point, I have traders who grow their size by adding options positions to their outright cash positions. And they manage each part of the position differently. And so on part of the position, they take profits quickly. On part of the position, they let it go, often the options. And they can visualize all of that, of hitting certain targets, what they'll do. And so they're playing that through in their mind again and again and again. And that repetition creates habit patterns of thinking and behaving. And so it's a way of accelerating their development, again, without having to go through the losses of doing it wrong and learning that way.
Have you noticed among some of the clients that you work with and the firms that they take advantage of some of the market replay, place a trade just kind of in a simulated account in this way? Is that something that you've seen traders do as well with success?
Yes, high frequency traders, day traders, absolutely. Being able to replay the market day and observe how markets unfolded. What did you do? What could you have seen differently? Back to the sports analogy, what do you do after a game? Well, you watch footage. You watch game film, and you go over the game and what you did right and what you didn't do right. And this is a little bit similar, but you can use that replay as a way of learning, as a way of practicing. That was done at a couple of the firms I worked with where there was high frequency trading, and it helped them internalize the patterns they needed to see to make the right decisions.
What would you say is the ideal way for a trader, kind of theoretically, to begin their trading journey, going from the beginning learning stages, to hopefully becoming profitable? I say this, as context in the medical field, or if you're pursuing other types of professional degrees, being a lawyer, for example, you get 3 years or more of study, then hands-on experience, and then you slowly get a chance, to work
That's
your
right.
way up. What would you say is kind of an ideal, or if this were to be a professional type of degree, as trading, as odd as that might sound, what would that professional sort of curriculum possibly look like?
Yeah, great question. I do think if I were starting out and I wanted to make trading my career, then I would look to join an organization where people have made trading their careers so I could get that mentoring, that teamwork. And it could be at a hedge fund, it could be at a proprietary trading firm. And so I would want to learn in a way that would prepare me to join a firm like that. And taking coursework might be relevant. Doing my own trading might be relevant. But if I was really looking to make a living from my trading, I would want to be around other people who are seriously pursuing making their living by trading. I think that's part of what has made some of the recent trading communities interesting. That they can be, they're not always, but they can be opportunities for individual traders to network with others and form their own virtual teams, as it were, and learn with each other, from each other. And that would be something I would pursue.
Thank you so much, Dr. Steenbarger. And last question, you know,
Sure.
what advice would you give, or parting words, to the listeners, particularly the retail traders out there who might be listening, to succeed in trading in 2025 and beyond?
Yeah. Okay. A last piece of wisdom. Well, I'll share something that is in the book that's coming out in a few months, and it gets back to that solution focused framework. At some point in your life, in your trading, you are already the person. You're already the trader that you want to become. At some point, you're doing the right things the right way. Not often enough, but there is some seed of success. There is some seed of greatness in what you do and how you do it. Your job is to figure out your seed, what you're good at, what your strengths are, and how you can leverage those for success in life and, of course, in markets.
Extremely powerful. Thank you so much, Dr. Steenbarger, for spending some time with me and
Absolutely.
discussing your findings, your observations from your career over the years and decades. I sincerely appreciate it. It's been an absolute honor. I can't wait to read your new book. I'm
Well,
going to get that
thank you.
as I can. So thank you so much, Dr. Steenbarger. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Anthony. I appreciate the time together.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Trader's Journey. We have additional episodes we believe you might also like, so don't forget to subscribe. You'll be notified of upcoming releases the moment they're available. Thanks for tuning in.